A man, overwhelmed by fear and uncertainty, leaves his pregnant wife, expecting triplets. But after the birth of his children, regret consumes him, leading him to beg for a second chance. What will it take for him to regain what he left behind? Lucas had always been a man of routines. His life in London was predictable and comfortable, marked by long hours at the financial firm where he had built a stable career, and quiet evenings with Emma, his wife of 5 years. For him, life was under control until one day, Emma delivered news that would upend his entire world. "We're going to have triplets," Emma said, her eyes a mix of joy and fear. Lucas's world froze. The news, which should have been a cause for celebration, echoed in his mind like a sound he couldn't escape. Triplets. 3 lives suddenly depending on him. The future, once so clear, turned into a sea of uncertainty. As the months of pregnancy progressed, Emma shone with the anticipation of motherhood. She bought clothes for the babies, decorated the nursery, and dreamed of the future. However, Lucas, who had always been her unwavering support, began to sink into a whirlpool of worries and fears he couldn't express. The nights that should have been spent by her side became hours of sleeplessness. How would they manage the expenses? Were they prepared to care for 3 babies at once? What if he failed as a father? The days filled with silent tensions. Emma carried on, excited about the arrival of the babies, but Lucas became emotionally distant, trapped in a cycle of anxiety he couldn't break. Conversations grew sparse, and gestures of affection disappeared. Lucas felt trapped, and the pressure built inside him like a ticking time bomb. The explosion came one night during Emma's 7th month of pregnancy. A discussion about medical expenses and the future education of the children was the spark that ignited the storm. Emma tried to calm him down, but her words only intensified Lucas's anxiety. "I don't know if I can do this," Lucas said, his voice breaking for the first time in a long while. The silence that followed was heavy. Emma looked at him with eyes full of concern, but before she could say anything, Lucas abruptly stood up and left the house. He walked through the streets of London without a clear direction, leaving behind the woman he loved, unaware that this decision would be the most devastating of his life. That same night, Lucas packed some belongings and moved into a small apartment on the outskirts of the city. He thought the distance would give him clarity, but all he found was a deeper emptiness. Emma was left heartbroken. She tried calling him, trying to understand what had happened, but every call was rejected, every message ignored. The reality of raising 3 children alone overwhelmed her, but with a strength she never knew she had, she decided to move forward. Her children deserved all the love and care she could give them, even if the man she thought would stand by her side had disappeared. Weeks passed, and Lucas's loneliness became unbearable. What had begun as an escape, a search for relief, turned into a self-imposed prison. The freedom he had so desperately sought transformed into a constant torment, a chain that bound him to his regrets and fears. But the breaking point came when he received an unexpected call. It was from a mutual friend, someone who had managed to stay in touch with both Lucas and Emma despite the distance Lucas had created. The news was simple yet devastating. The triplets had been born. The news hit Lucas like a punch to the gut. Images of his children, whom he had never even seen, flooded his mind. Guilt began to consume him, slowly at first, but then it became an unbearable weight. For days, he couldn't focus on anything else. His mind was a whirlwind of emotions: guilt, fear, and a deep longing to see his children. Yet, he knew that returning wouldn't be easy. Not after what he had done. Emma had every right not to want to see him ever again. But Lucas, finally confronting the consequences of his decisions, knew he couldn't give up without trying. After several sleepless nights, Lucas picked up the phone and called Emma. The ringing echoed in his ear like a sentence, but as expected, she didn't answer. He tried again the next day, and the day after that, but the result was always the same: silence. Desperate, Lucas decided to write a letter. It took him hours to find the right words, but he finally finished it. In the letter, he sincerely apologized for leaving her, explained his fears and regrets, and asked for a chance to see his children, even if just once. With a heavy heart, he sent the letter to Emma's parents' address, where he knew she was staying. Days passed with no response. Lucas began to think that Emma had ignored him entirely when, unexpectedly, he received a message from her. It was brief and cold but said what he needed to know: "You can come to see them, but don't expect anything more from me." The day of the visit, Lucas was more nervous than ever. He stopped in front of Emma's parents' house, a place that had once felt like a second home but now seemed strange and distant. He took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Emma opened the door. She was thinner, with dark circles under her eyes from lack of sleep, but she was still the strong woman he had always known. She looked at him with a mixture of exhaustion and distrust. "Come in," she said, without much enthusiasm. Lucas entered the living room, and there, in a crib, were his children. 3 tiny beings wrapped in blankets, sleeping peacefully. The sight of the triplets struck him with a force he hadn't anticipated. He approached slowly, as if any sudden movement might wake them. As he leaned over the crib, he felt tears welling up in his eyes. They were so small, so vulnerable, and he had been absent during the most crucial moments of their lives. Emma watched silently from across the room, her arms crossed. There was no trace of the warmth they had once shared, but she allowed Lucas to have his moment. "They're beautiful," Lucas whispered, not taking his eyes off the babies. "They are," Emma replied, her tone leaving no room for further conversation. Lucas spent the next few minutes in silence, simply observing his children. Finally, he dared to ask, "How are they?" "They're fine," Emma said. "It's been hard, but we're fine." The weight of those words wasn't lost on Lucas. He knew that when Emma said "we," she meant herself and the babies, excluding him entirely. The reality of what he had lost hit him again, but it also made him more determined not to let this be the last time he saw his children. The visit to see his children was only the first step. Lucas knew that winning Emma back wouldn't be easy, and earning a place in his children's lives would require much more than an apology. He decided then that he would have to prove his commitment not just with words but with actions. From that day on, Lucas began visiting the triplets regularly. Emma allowed him to be present but maintained an emotional distance that Lucas respected. He understood that he had broken something that wouldn't be easily repaired. However, with each visit, the bond with his children grew stronger. Changing diapers, feeding them, and rocking them to sleep became part of his new routine. And although Emma's gestures remained cold, Lucas noticed small signs that his efforts weren't going unnoticed. One day, during one of his visits, the smallest of the triplets began showing signs of illness. Alarmed, Emma rushed him to the hospital in the middle of the night. When Lucas found out, he hurried to join her. At the hospital, Lucas proved to be a constant support, staying by her side, caring for the other 2 babies while Emma attended to the sick one. During those long hours in the waiting room, they shared little more than glances, but those glances were more meaningful than any words. Finally, the baby recovered, and Emma felt something begin to change within her. Lucas's dedication, his willingness to be there during the most difficult times, started to erode the wall of resentment she had built around her heart. Nonetheless, Emma knew she couldn't simply forget what had happened. She needed time and proof that Lucas had truly changed. Lucas, for his part, understood that regaining Emma's trust would require more than words or symbolic gestures. It would require consistency, sacrifice, and an unwavering commitment. Over time, Lucas decided to seek professional help. He began attending therapy to better understand his fears and learn how to manage his emotions. It was a difficult process, but each session helped him understand why he had acted the way he did, and more importantly, it helped him discover how to be the father his children needed. The visits became more frequent, and Lucas started getting more involved in the baby's daily routines. Although Emma still kept an emotional distance, Lucas noticed small changes in her. A longer conversation than usual, a fleeting smile when one of the triplets did something funny, or the way she let him stay a little longer after his visits. One day, Lucas received an unexpected job offer from an old colleague in Manchester. The position promised a significantly higher salary and great opportunities for growth. The only condition was that he would have to move away from London. The offer was tempting, but Lucas knew that accepting it would mean distancing himself from his children and Emma, risking any chance of reconciliation. That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. He knew that this decision would determine the course of his life. At dawn, he resolved to decline the offer. His children and the possibility of rebuilding his relationship with Emma were worth more than any career or salary. The next day, Lucas went to Emma's parents' house. He found her in the living room, playing with the triplets. He sat down quietly beside her, watching as the children laughed and played, unaware of the weight of the conversation that was about to take place. "Emma, I need to talk to you," he finally said. She looked at him cautiously but nodded. "I received a job offer in Manchester," Lucas began. "It's a great opportunity, something I would have accepted without a second thought a few years ago. But I'm not going to accept it." Emma raised an eyebrow, surprised. "Why not?" "Because what I want more than anything in the world is to be here, with them," he pointed to the babies playing on the floor. "And with you, if you'll give me that chance." Emma looked at him silently, processing what he had just said. "Turning down that offer is just one step," Lucas continued. "I know I hurt you deeply, and I know nothing I do can change what happened. But I'm here, and I'm willing to show you every day that I've changed, that I can be the man you need and the father these children deserve." There was a long silence between them. Emma didn't take her eyes off Lucas, as if searching for any hint of doubt in his face. Finally, she sighed and leaned toward him. "Lucas, I've seen how hard you've worked to be here, how you've gotten involved with the kids. But I need time. I need more than words to trust you again. However, this is a good start," she said with a small smile. It was the first time in a long while that Lucas saw a real opening in her, a glimpse of what they once had. His heart filled with hope, but also with a renewed sense of responsibility. He knew the path was still long, but for the first time in a while, he felt he was heading in the right direction. Days later, the first birthday of the triplets was approaching. Lucas decided to organize a surprise party in the garden of Emma's parents' house. He contacted friends and family, prepared the decorations, and bought a special cake for the little ones. He wanted this day to be unforgettable, not just for the children but also for Emma. The party was a success. The triplets, dressed in little shirts Lucas had custom-made with their names embroidered, laughed and played as the guests surrounded them, full of love and joy. Emma watched the scene from a distance, still somewhat reserved, but she couldn't help smiling at the effort Lucas had put into everything. Toward the end of the party, as the guests were saying their goodbyes, Lucas called everyone's attention. He stood in the center of the garden, holding a photo album in his hands. "I want to thank everyone for being here today, celebrating the first year of these 3 little miracles," he began, his voice filled with emotion. "This past year has been a journey full of challenges and moments I'll never forget. But what I want to share today is something very special." Lucas opened the album and began showing the photos he had compiled. Moments from his visits, the first steps, the first words, the small achievements he had witnessed and secretly documented. The photos showed not only the children's growth but also Lucas's efforts to be present in their lives. Emma, seeing the photos, felt tears fill her eyes. She hadn't known that Lucas had been keeping those memories, and seeing them now, so carefully presented, touched something deep within her. "Emma," Lucas said, approaching her with the album in his hands, "all I want is for these children to grow up surrounded by love, and I want you and me to be the ones who give them that love together. I know it won't be easy, but I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Emma took the album, looked at the photos, and then raised her eyes to Lucas. She saw in his eyes the sincerity, the remorse, and above all, the love he still felt for her and their children. In that moment, something inside her softened. "I can't promise that everything will go back to the way it was," Emma said, her voice trembling, "but I do believe we can try." Lucas nodded, knowing that this was the greatest hope he could have asked for. "That's all I want," he replied with a smile. After the emotional reconciliation during the triplets' first birthday, Lucas and Emma decided that the next step would be to work on their relationship, but gradually. Both knew it wouldn't be easy, and that trust, once broken, wouldn't be rebuilt overnight. However, there was renewed hope, a light at the end of the tunnel that motivated them to keep going. In the days that followed, Lucas moved into a small apartment near Emma's parents' house, with the goal of being more present in the children's lives and facilitating the transition. Although Emma had accepted to give him a second chance, they weren't ready to live together again. This separate space gave them both the time and distance needed to heal and rebuild their relationship from scratch. The first few months were an exercise in patience and adaptation. Lucas continued attending therapy, both individually and as a couple, which helped both of them open up and address unresolved issues. Couples therapy became a safe space where they could express their emotions, fears, and expectations for the future. Emma, though still hurt, began to see Lucas with new eyes, recognizing the genuine effort he was making to change and become a better man. One of the biggest challenges was learning to communicate again. Before the breakup, Lucas and Emma had often avoided talking about difficult topics, leading to a buildup of resentments and misunderstandings. Now, with the help of therapy, they were learning to be more open and honest with each other. Though the conversations were sometimes uncomfortable, both knew they were necessary to heal and move forward. Lucas also committed to being present in every aspect of the triplets' lives. He began sharing daily responsibilities with Emma, from meals and baths to doctor visits and sleepless nights when the kids couldn't sleep. This commitment not only helped relieve Emma's burden but also allowed Lucas to form a stronger bond with his children, who gradually began to recognize him as a constant figure in their lives. As the weeks passed, the family began to find a new rhythm. Lucas and Emma, though still maintaining some emotional distance, began to enjoy family moments together. Walks in the park, afternoons of play at home, and shared dinners became rituals that reinforced the sense of unity they were working to rebuild. However, not everything was easy. There were days when the past weighed heavily, when old wounds reopened and fears threatened to undo what they had achieved. In those moments, Lucas remained steadfast in his commitment, reminding Emma that he was there to stay, that he wouldn't run away again. Though these moments of tension were difficult, they were also opportunities for both to demonstrate their growth and desire to make the relationship work. One of those critical moments occurred when Lucas received another call from his old colleague in Manchester. The company was still interested in him and offered him the chance to reconsider the job offer. This time, Lucas decided to talk to Emma before making any decision. Though the offer was tempting, especially from a financial perspective, Lucas knew his place was with his family. Emma, for her part, appreciated that he had shared his thoughts with her instead of making a unilateral decision. Ultimately, Lucas declined the offer, reaffirming his commitment to stay in London and build a life with Emma and the children. This gesture further strengthened Emma's trust in him, showing her that Lucas had truly changed. Slowly, she began to let him get closer, not only as the father of her children but also as her partner. Though they still had a long way to go, Emma felt that the barrier of distrust she had built was beginning to crumble. As the triplets' first year came to an end, Lucas and Emma began discussing the future. They talked about their plans for the children's education, how they wanted to raise them, and the values they wanted to instill in them. These conversations, which would have been sources of tension before, now became opportunities to connect and reaffirm their shared vision for the family. Finally, after several months of living separately, Lucas and Emma decided it was time to take the next step. Emma suggested that Lucas move back into the family home, but this time, with a new perspective and renewed commitment. Though both were nervous about what this would mean, they knew they had worked hard to reach this point and deserved the chance to start over. The day Lucas moved back in was simple, without any grand ceremony, but full of meaning. The triplets, now walking and exploring the world with curiosity, welcomed him with laughter and hugs. Emma, watching the scene, felt that for the first time in a long while, her family was whole again. The months following Lucas's return to the family home were a period of adjustment and growth. Gradually, the family's routine stabilized, and the home that had once been marked by uncertainty and pain began to fill with love, laughter, and hope. The triplets, now more active and curious, became the center of attention, bringing Lucas and Emma together in ways neither had anticipated. The commitment Lucas had demonstrated over the past year was reflected in every aspect of his family life. He had become a present and dedicated father, and also a partner willing to support and listen to Emma at all times. Therapy continued to be an integral part of their relationship, helping them strengthen their communication and resolve conflicts as they arose. Though there were difficult moments, both knew they were in this together, and that the foundation they had rebuilt was solid. One of the most significant tests of their new life together came when the triplets started attending daycare. It was an emotional moment for both parents, who watched as their little ones, who had been the focus of so much effort and sacrifice, took their first steps toward independence. Lucas and Emma held hands as they left the children on their first day, sharing a smile full of pride and also relief. They knew this was just the beginning of many more milestones they would face together. Over time, Lucas and Emma's relationship evolved, leaving behind the shadows of the past. They rediscovered their love and mutual respect, building a relationship based on trust and a shared commitment to being a family. They often remembered the difficulties they had faced, not with bitterness, but with the satisfaction of having overcome them and grown from them. The triplets' second birthday was a special occasion. Unlike the previous year, the celebration wasn't marked by tension or uncertainty. Friends and family gathered at the house, which was now a symbol of unity and resilience. Lucas and Emma worked together to organize a joyful and colorful party, filled with games, laughter, and love. During the party, Lucas and Emma took a moment to step away from the bustle and watch their children as they played. The three children, happy and carefree, represented the future they had imagined and, through effort and dedication, were building together. "We've come a long way," Emma said, looking at Lucas with a warm smile. "Yes, we have," Lucas replied, taking her hand. "And I couldn't have done it without you." Emma looked at him with tenderness. They had been through so much, and now, in this moment, she felt that it had all been worth it. The fears and resentments that had once driven them apart had transformed into a deep connection and a love that had been tested and strengthened over time. "What we've built together is beautiful," Emma continued. "And I know that, no matter what happens, we'll be okay." Lucas nodded, feeling a peace he hadn't experienced in years. In that moment, he knew that his family was his greatest achievement, the center of his life, and his greatest source of pride. He had made mistakes, he had fallen, but he had gotten back up and fought for what mattered most. As they watched the children blow out the candles on their birthday cake, Lucas and Emma felt grateful for the second chance they had given each other, for the love they had rediscovered, and for the life they were building together. Years passed, and though there were challenges, Lucas and Emma faced them together, always with the well-being of their children as their top priority. The triplets grew up surrounded by love and support, seeing in their parents an example of resilience, commitment, and unity. In the end, Lucas and Emma's home became a place of refuge and joy, where the values of family, communication, and forgiveness prevailed. As the children grew and began to explore the world, Lucas and Emma were always by their side, guiding them with the love and wisdom that only time and experience could provide. The story of Lucas and Emma, which began with a painful separation and deep regret, transformed into a tale of redemption and hope. Together, they proved that, with effort, honesty. The biggest lesson from this story is that love and commitment require courage and constant effort. When Lucas left Emma, he was fleeing from his fears and insecurities. However, by running away, he also lost the opportunity to face his challenges head-on and build something lasting. It was only by recognizing his mistakes, seeking help, and dedicating himself to his family that he found true strength and redemption. This story shows us that even in the most difficult circumstances, it is possible to rebuild what has been broken, but it requires humility, perseverance, and above all, love. Now, we want to know, if you were in Emma's place, would you give a second chance? Why? Please share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear your opinion. If you enjoyed this story, Don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more heartwarming content like this. Every like and subscription helps us continue bringing you stories that touch the heart. Thank you so much for watching.